Proudly, I was a teacher for over 20 years. And when I first started teaching, I was teaching in a very poor area called Port Tobacco, Maryland. And when I first started teaching, I was a special educator. I had 12 students, and this particular first day of class, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. 11 of my students walked in orderly, quietly, took their desks and seats, and it was perfect. Then came David. David walked into that classroom and he hit every single kid in the room. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Then he looked right up at me and he said, I hate this class, I hate this school, and I hate you, Miss Mulvaney. Well, my goodness, any other teacher in the school would have sent David directly down to the principal's office. But I am so grateful I had so many wonderful mentors, and I had a lot of good information, because it dawned on me, number one, I know that when people are scared, when people are hurt, they always get angry. Number two, I know that adults have a lot of ways to display their anger, but children, when they're being bullied or when they're being hurt, they only do two things. They either A, act out, or they get smaller and smaller and smaller, so nobody will notice them. They won't get hit or they won't get yelled at. So by David's behavior, when I had 11 kids that came in beautifully, and then came David, I knew something was going on in David's life. So I watched him the whole rest of the day. Then I had to think, the next day, I had to find out what was the customer service experience David was getting every day he came to our school. So I went out to the front bus stop, and sure enough, I watched him as he came out of the bus. All the kids came off the bus except David, and David was virtually the last kid off the bus. And I saw the bus driver say to him, David, I said, bend over and tie them shoes. He had gotten one yelled at already one time, and his feet haven't even touched the ground yet. Then there were all these teachers on bus duty. 3 of the teachers watched and heard the bus driver, and they knew David had arrived. They said, David, I said, slow down. David, I said, don't do that. David, I'm going to turn you into the principal's office. David has now been yelled at 4 times, and he hasn't even opened the door to our school system. When he finally gets up to the door, he is racing. He doesn't care what these teachers say to him, because he's making a beeline right to the cafeteria. You see, David wasn't just hungry. David was starving. He gets in that line and he knows exactly what to do. He is slamming that food into his mouth as fast as he can. And he heard the lunch ladies say, David, we've told you a million times, don't eat like that. Don't be a little piglet. Stop doing that. And so he didn't care, because he was hungry. He touched the tray in front of him. He touched the tray in back of him, because he knew what would happen. Those kids said, Stinky David touched my tray. I'm not eating that. He took all 3 trays and he went and he sat down and he had a feast. And he ate everything that was on that tray. Then I watched him go into the hallway. As he did, I was floored. Every single kid that ran into David said to him the same thing, Stinky David, Stinky David, Stinky David. And they made fun of him. They jeered at him. But he didn't care, because now he had his food. He was racing to get to our morning outside playground. He gets out there, and you have to understand, children, when they use their big, large muscles, anything that has been upsetting them, they throw that energy off in that kind of play. That's why kids, you can mess up and you say, I said stop it, and then 5 minutes later, they're just loving on you, because they have gotten rid of all of that negative energy. And that's what David was about to do. When all of a sudden, a group of kids put him in the middle of a circle and started singing, Stinky David, you smell like a skunk. Well, he had had enough. And all of a sudden, he reared back, ready to take one of them out, when up comes the PE teacher and said, David, I said, get up against that wall. So now David is sent up against the wall. He's kicking the wall, kicking the wall. I hate this school. I hate this school. He runs down the hallway. He's the last kid to enter my class again. And he said he hits every single kid in the class. He said, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And then he said, I hate this class. I hate this school. And I hate you, Miss Mulvaney. Well, I can only say, if I had been treated that badly in that short a period of time, I too would have been quite angry. But I didn't know what to do, and I was fairly new in this school, so I thought, I have to get the good information, and you know where you get that, down at the teacher's lounge. Not, but you go in there anyway, and I said, hey, has anybody ever had David? Well, all of a sudden, the teacher started saying, do you mean Stinky David? And I said, why do you call him that? And they said, Miss Mulvaney, what is wrong with you? We can smell David all the way down the hall. He smells like a skunk. He has 7 brothers and sisters that have gone before, and those parents don't give a lick about that kid. He comes in stinky, he comes in smelly, they're hungry, and we have sent note after note after note home with those kids, and they never get a response. I've never gotten a response. Those parents are just terrible, terrible parents. And I was stunned. And I thought to myself, I didn't smell David because I have very bad sinus challenges and I can't smell a lot of times. So I didn't smell David at all. And so he didn't bother me. So I said to those teachers, I said, well, I can't teach a kid that's hungry. I can't teach a kid that's dirty. And I certainly can't teach a kid that's being bullied by virtually everyone. I'm going out to speak to those parents. Well, they went nuts and said, Miss Mulvaney, you are not a social worker. It's not your job. You can't do that. And I said, well, I'm doing it. So I went back down to my class, and David had come back in from a lunch recess. And I said, David, would you be kind enough to tell your mom and daddy I'll be out this afternoon? And David looked up at me and he said, Miss Mulvaney, you come out to my house. My dogs will chew them chicken legs of yours right on off, right on off. Well, I was a lot skinnier back then. And I said, well, you tell your daddy I'm coming anyway. Well, I told you I lived in a place called Port Tobacco, so you can guess what we did in Port Tobacco. We raised tobacco. And if you've never been to a tobacco farm, the barns are like slats. It looks like they're about to fall down because there's different, one slat's in, one slat's out, so that the air can come through and curate the tobacco. And it looks like it's about to fall down, but it's just in there, the tobacco's hanging. And so all of these roads were dirt roads. They didn't even have names a lot of time. I had to keep stopping and asking, did anybody know where David lives? Do you know where David lived? And they said, go down that wide road, turn left, and you'll hear them dogs. You're going to hear them dogs, so wait to hear them dogs. Well, I get down that road, and in all my years, I can't even express to you my horror when I saw this house. It looked almost like a tobacco barn. It was leaning at a 90-degree angle. All the children were lined up on the front porch, pretty as you please. I was shocked. But over to the side, the mama was locked in a car because she had just been released from a mental institute, and they were afraid that she would hurt herself or hurt one of those kids, so she was locked in this car. The grandmama was standing in the doorway, and she was kind of leaning with the house, like she was trying to hold the house up. The daddy was standing down below with a pitchfork and his overalls, and he motioned to me. I didn't know what to do. So I had come there ready to just bombard this guy with, what are you doing, and why don't you do this, and why don't you do that, when all I could see was, here is a man that is extremely proud, who will not take government assistance, and he's doing everything he can to support this household. He had no running water. There was no virtual electricity that I could see. They had an outhouse, and they had this huge pack of dogs. So I was a little bit terrified, would be a kind way to say it. So But I could not say to this man what I had intended to say. So the first thing I did was I respectfully raised my hand outside the car and I said, "Sir, would you kindly hold your dogs back so I can bring my chicken legs onto your farm?" And he laughed and I laughed, and it kind of cut the tension. He held the dogs back, or told them to back up. And sure enough, I got out of the car. And I stood before this man and his children, and I said, "Sir, I have come out here to talk to you about your son David, who is in my class. And I have to tell you, David is probably one of the most," and I had to really search for a word that would fit, unique children I have ever met. Now that was true, because he could cuss better than any 5 sailors I'd ever met. And so Daddy's just lit up. He had a smile that came on his face. And I thought, what the heck? And sure enough, this Daddy began to tell me. He said, "Oh, I'm so glad you came out, Miss Mulvaney. You see, for years, we've been getting letters from the teachers. And they're so special that I keep them in a treasure box." A treasure box? I was perplexed. Why would he keep letters that were horrible in a treasure box? And now I know why. Because one of the kids got the letter and he said, "Let me read it to you, Daddy. It says, Mrs. Jones says that David is a wonderful young man and he is a superstar in my class." And the Daddy said, "Ooh, that was one of the ones I loved to treasure in the treasure box." And so what had happened was the older kids had taught the younger kids to absolutely straight up lie to their daddy and read a letter that they had made up in their head. And then he would put it in the treasure box. And why did this happen? Because the daddy couldn't read. And so here was this proud man doing everything he could to help his children. My heart was in my mouth. And all I could think of was these poor kids. They come to school dirty because there's no shower. They come to school hungry because there's very little food. And they come to school wanting to do better. And their daddy's trying every way he can. He just needs help. And I knew he was such a proud man, he wouldn't take my help. So I had to structure it in another way. I said, "Sir, I am so grateful for your David in my class. But I know that sometimes he's getting picked on and ridiculed by the other children. Would you help me, sir? Could I ask for your help?" And the daddy instantly was so proud that he was going to help this big school teacher. "Oh, yes, ma'am. What can I do for you?" And I said to him, "We have a shower in our school system. And I would truly appreciate it if you would allow me to let David go down and take a shower every day. And I want you to know that people sending clothes and shoes all the time, and it's piling up in my classroom. Would it be okay if I let David bring home some clothes and shoes, and for him and for the other children, and if I'd let him wash them when he comes back, so he can wear them one day and then bring them in the next, and I'll get them washed for him? Would that be okay with you? Could you help me out there?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, we'll gladly help you." And I said, "Another thing is down our cafeteria, oh, Lordy, we get so much food that's left over every single day. Would it be okay if I had them pack up David a lunch so he could bring it home, and you could help us, because I don't want to throw all that food out every day. Would you help me, sir?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And so we made this pact that I would do this. And then his words changed my life. Now, I told you I'm a little bit of a crybaby, and I am. And just give me a second. But this man changed my whole teaching career. He looked at me and he said, "Miss Mulvaney, after all these years in the schools, you're the very first teacher that ever drove on out to my house. I am so proud to welcome you." And he said, "I will do everything I can to help my children." And he said, "All I ask is that you do everything you can to make them into the superstars they were meant to be." Superstars they were meant to be. Here was a man that had a 3rd grade education, smarter than all the teachers that we had in that schoolroom. Oh my gosh, I was crushed, and I did everything I could to hold back my tears to say, "Thank you, sir, for your help. I'll gladly be waiting to see David tomorrow." I pulled out and I got down the road a little bit, and I stopped and I sobbed. I sobbed just like I'm crying now. because I thought I was so ashamed of the way our school had treated these children. Our customer service to these children and this family was miserable. They deserved better from us. Here they had been trying as hard as they could to do what they could, and we were the ones that let them down. And I made it my mission from that day forward. I would do better. And I would do what he asked me to do, make them into the superstars they were meant to be, and create a magical moments so that they would experience that and come back every day happy. So the next day, I knew I could not do this by myself. Education is a cycle of service, and it starts with the first touch of the day and all through the day. So I went out to the bus driver, and I said to him before he took off to pick up David, I said, "Sir, would you help me, please?" He said, "Oh, Miss Mulvaney, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, I would appreciate it. When you go to pick up David, when you drop him off, I want you to say, 'Thank you for riding with me, David. Are you coming back?'" And he said, "Well, why would I say that to David?" And I said, "Honey, because he's coming back anyway, and I want him to have a good experience. Will you help me? Will you say that, please?" And he said, "Okay, Miss Mulvaney, I'll do it." I then went to the cafeteria, and I gathered up all the lunch ladies, and I said, "Would you help me, please?" And they said, "Miss Mulvaney, what can we do for you?" And I said, "Every day I'm going to bring my students down. There are only 12 of them. I want you to stop the line, because the number one thing that motivates and inspires students is applause. Number one thing that will motivate them. So when I come in, I want you to stop the line, and I want you to say, 'Miss Mulvaney's superstars have arrived.'" That takes less than 10 seconds, less than, I said, move on down the line. And so in that 10 seconds, you can create such a positive atmosphere for my students that they will immediately go down that line. Will you do it? And every week I will send you down something different to say. One week I want you to say, "I have never seen so many well-behaved children in all my life, especially to David." And so they said, "All right, Miss Mulvaney, we'll do it." Then I went on down to the teacher's lounge, and I went in and I said, "Will y'all help me, please? Come on, Miss Mulvaney, what do you need?" And I said, "I need you to say kind, charitable things to David. I want you to say to him, 'We appreciate you, David. I believe in you, David. I see you, David.' And if you can't say that, will you please commit not to saying anything at all? Because everything you say to them, the other kids see you as the leader. And if you can taunt him, if you can say mean things to him, so can they. And if you put him down, they will put him down. Will you not say anything or say something kind?" And they said yes. And I'm not foolish enough to believe that that one time wouldn't help. I had to do this over and over and over, spaced repetition every single day, so that I could finally lift the belief system of David. He had had years of Stinky David, Stinky David, Stinky David. 2 or 3 times of "I believe in you, David" wasn't going to work. It had to be "I believe in you, David. I believe in you, David. I believe in you, David." So today, I'm going to ask you to take action. I want you to make a decision to look at your own self. And I want you to say, what kind of customer service are you giving to your students? What things are dropping out of your mouth? And if they're positive, oh, please keep saying those more and more and more. If they're less than positive, don't say them again. Don't say it again. I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you'll do that. I want you also to make a commitment to take action, to take a look at when you have a big reaction to something, when the students are doing something and you have a big reaction. Because remember, when people get scared, when people get hurt, they almost always get angry. When you see yourself have a big reaction, I want you to stop. I want you to ask yourself, did I have that reaction because I'm scared or because I'm hurt? And I want you to then take responsibility for your reactions. Stop blaming the students. Well, it was because they did this and they did that. They're only responding to what we do, and that's why they do what they do. Remember that when you get angry, it's because usually you got scared or hurt, and that students only have two ways to react. They either get whacked out and they start acting out, or they get smaller and smaller and smaller. Watch your reaction and start looking at the reaction of your students to see which ones might need a little bit more extra comfort, kindness, and compassion from you. We can create magical moments every single day with heart that will create magical experiences for the students, and so that they want to come back and learn, because they are the future leaders of tomorrow.